All of you, hope you guys are great and welcome back to Complete JavaScript course. So I know this video is coming after so many days, but finally we are here and we are continuing with our JavaScript course. So in the last video we talked about that how we can write JavaScript code in our Visual Code Studio, and we have learned that how we can write our JavaScript code in our HTML file, in the HTML document, as well as how we can create external JavaScript file and we can connect with our HTML document and we can write the code in that JavaScript and pass into our HTML that will display in the browser. And that's what we have left in the last video. So in this video we'll talk about values and variables. We'll talk about naming convention, we'll talk about reserve keyword, we'll talk about the constant and how you can write proper name to your variables so you don't face any problem in your project later down when you will work in large scale problem. So last time we have console log out these variables, so let's quickly comment out of this because I'm not deleting all these codes which we have already written, because I want to give you all these codes so you guys can take the reference from here. Okay, so this is going to be the part 3, okay, file. From there you can able to compare, but if you're watching this video you don't need to download the code. Okay, so let's talk about values, that what it is and how we can declare in our JavaScript. So if you write anything between double quotes or a single quotes, for example if I type dollar, so this is a value. Okay, this is a legitimate value which I'm using in JavaScript. So let me console log out this and let me show you. So if I use console.log and if I pass the same thing, I will simply double quote, and if I type here dollar and if I console log out it, as you can see dollar is printing. So here you have to understand one thing, that this is value, it's not a variable. Okay, it could be a number, it could be a string, it could be a simply boolean. So if I replicate this, if I simply duplicate this one and if I change this to a number, let's come here and if I type 23 and save it, as you can see it's printing dollar. Let me zoom this one so you guys can see. It's too much, so it's a number. In the same way, if I want to replicate this one, I did it twice, not a big deal, simply remove this one. So all these things which you use, if you use strings in double quote or single quote, that's a value. If you use number, this is how you denote, it's a value. If you use boolean, this is also a value, and if you use a number, that's also a value. Okay, so this is how you can declare values in JavaScript. Now let's talk about the variables, that how you can declare in variables in JavaScript. So to declare variables you have to use 3 reserve keyword in JavaScript. So there are the 3 keywords are var, let and const. We're going to talk each of these keyword in brief, so for the time being don't think too much about it, just focus on variables in JavaScript. So let me get rid of this and I'll take const and I will declare a variable. I will say first name, and I will take a string DAULAT. so this is how I'm declaring a variable. So let me comment out this one. So I'm taking this variable, it's a const, I'm taking this variable first name and I'm assigning the value dollar. As you can see here we have assigned a value dollar. So this is the value and this is the variables. So this time if I console log this, simply console log this first name, I will have the output. As you can see, I will have the output. And the advantage of this taking these variables is amazing. So for example, I have to use the same value in multiple places. So in multiple functions I have to use it. So if I replicate this couple of times and if I save, I will have these many dollars. So the only changes I have to do in my value right up here, if I type Schwab, the entire output would be changed. That wherever I have used these variables, in all those places I can easily able to replace the value. So this is the difference between value and variables. Okay, the only thing you have to keep in mind, in short, that this is how we declare a value and this is how we declare variables. Okay, so let me get rid of this few, just leave it only one. Now let's talk about the declaring variables name in JavaScript. So as you can see in the last example, I written the variable name in this way, in camel case. So I started with a small letter, but in the second keyword will have a capital letter. So this is the one way of declaring variable name, and this is the one and highly practiced in JavaScript. So if you see and find any code, you will find this is how they declare their variable name. So this is the one way of declaring variables in JavaScript, and there are other as well. So if I replicate this and simply underscore name, so this is the second way of declaring variables name, which you will find in most of the code base. And the other way is like this. So for example, you can start with a underscore, and you can start with a dollar. These are the four ways which you can use to declare your variable's name. Like you can start with a camel case or a dash notations or a dash with first and or a dollar sign. So these are the four ways you have in your hand to declare a variable's name. But in most of the code which are there and the programs have written, you have found that this one is the 80% of the variables are declared in this, then second, and the third one is the dollar sign. And now let's talk about what you can't use in your variable. So this is the way you can declare, but the things are not allowed in defining your variables names are that you can't start with a number. For example, if I take another variable and if I start with number, EASY, easy, as you can see, I will get this red dash, okay? And if I assign something dollar, I will see, if I save, I'll get an error. If I go to the error, here we will see I'm getting this error that invalid or unexpected token syntax error. So your console will directly pop up this red message that this is, you can't use it. So you can't define your variable's name with a number. If you can able to see that unexpected, okay? So you can't start with your variable's name with a number, but you can add something in front of that and it becomes totally valid, okay? Right now you can see the error gone, so it's valid. So you can use number in between the variables, but you can't start with the first letter, okay? And in the variables you can also use any kind of symbols. For example, if I remove this, let's come up here, and if I use here, so for example, if I use under like this, and if I save, I will get this syntax error. I can't use any symbols in my variables. So you can't use symbols. You can allow to use, like you can use dash, you can use number, but you can't use symbols in your variables name. So this is the thing you have to keep in mind, that you can declare your variables in any one of these types, like first name, underscore, starting with dash or dollar sign, but you can't start your variable name with number, or you can't use any kind of symbols in your variable's name. Now let's talk about some reserved keyword in JavaScript. So there are a couple of keywords in JavaScript which is already reserved. For example, if I take new keyword, and you can see I'll get an error. If I take 23, I'll get an error. So this new keyword is reserved in JavaScript. So if you are over on it, you will find this message that new is not allowed as a variable declaration naming. So this keyword is reserved in JavaScript, so you can't use it. So if you want to use it, you have to use any one of these. So you can use this dollar sign. Now it become a variables JavaScript variable name. If you can use dash notation, and you can use in this way, but if you can't use this normal way, okay? You can't use this new keyword. And there is one more keyword is function, okay? Let me remove this. So this is one more keyword which you can't use for declaring a variable name. In the same way, if you want to use it, you have to use a dollar sign or any other, so you can use in that way. So these two keywords are reserved. And there is one more thing which you can't do for declaring a variable's name. You can't start with a capital letter. If you start with a P or something like that, like push all 23, so you can't take this as well, okay? As you can see right now, we're not getting any error, but in JavaScript, when you start your variable's name with P, denote that you are starting object oriented programming. We're going to learn about it, okay? So generally we use capital denotation when we write object oriented programming code, okay? So don't start your variable's name with capital letter, because it's totally for object oriented programming, okay? So we're going to talk about that. Don't need to worry about it. We're going to touch every single topic in details. That's why I'm giving so much emphasis, that you guys don't face any problem while we do a large scale project, okay? So this is the thing which you can do, and these are the thing which you can't. So I hope you have got the clear understanding that which are the keywords you can use. So if you guys want to know that what are the keyword, reserved keyword in JavaScript, so simply come here, open a new tab and type like reserved keyword in JavaScript. You will find all the list, and those keyword you can't use it, okay? So I know that you guys can do that Google search and you can easily able to figure it out, okay? So now that's for the naming convention. Now let's talk about constant in JavaScript, okay? So let me get rid of this. I don't want to have this red errors in my console. So all the errors you can able to find right up here, all the messages you can find, all the information you can easily able to find right up here. So everything you can find, and you will have this tab, so you can easily able to switch any one of these and check that what messages you are getting, okay? So we were talking about constant in JavaScript. So constant, a kind of variable which never change, okay? So if I declare variables and with a capital letter, and if I write anything like hello, and then you can see that here I'm declaring this variable's name with a capital letter. So this generally means that it's a constant variable. So this is the general convention we follow in programming. So whenever we want to write a value which never going to be changed, on those cases we're going to denote those value with a capital. Okay, it's going to be capital, all the letter is going to be capital. Okay, so this is going to be a constant value, it's not going to be changed. We generally use this kind of denotation, this kind of variable declaration when we use any kind of APIs, when you want to use any secret keys. Okay, on those time we use this kind of naming convention. Okay, so that's what you have to keep in mind. So now the question is that how should you declare your variable name? I have seen a lot of code and people give crazy name to their variables, and that's become very hard to understand whatever variables they have taken. So declaring a variable is also art. So when anyone look at your code, they can easily understand that what this variables is doing and what is specifying. So you have to be very descriptive. Okay, so for example, I have seen codes like this, like one new, and they have given their value, whatever the value is. They have simply do this and one, and this one is going to be simply 2. This is how they have declared the variable. Do you think that it's make any sense that what is 1 new, what is 2 new? If you look at the code, you can't understand that what these variables are defining. So declaring variables name like this is absolutely fine, but it doesn't make any sense. So when someone will look at the code, they won't understand that what these variables are doing, what they want to refer. Okay, so you have to be descriptive with your variables name. So generally this is how I would like to describe the variables name, and I also recommend to the other coders who, when I work in a group. Okay, so if I take a variables like const, and if I declare a variable my first job, okay, and type as a programmer, if I replicate this and second job creator. Okay, so as you can see, which one make more sense, these two or these two? These variables names are very descriptive. It's talking about that what it is. So okay, my first job simply programmer, my second job creator. Okay, so you have to define these kind of variables name, not this way. When you're working in a small project, it's totally okay that you can define your variable name like this. But when you are working on a big project like e-commerce or building any kind of softwares, on that time things becomes very clutter if you're not defining the variables name properly. Okay, so this is how you have to declare a variable name, and this is what the pattern I'm going to follow throughout this entire code. Okay, I'm going to declare all my variables name very descriptively like this. So let's quickly wrap up this video and let's repeat what we have covered so far. Okay, so we talked about the values, that how we can define values in our JavaScript. So here we have seen a couple of examples. So this is how we can define the value. We can write anything in between the double quote or single quote, going to be a string, number, or a boolean. This is how we denote the variables in JavaScript. So this is the one way of declaring, camel case, and this is the second way, dash notations. This is also a front dash notation and $sign. So these are the 4 ways you can use to declare variables name, and these are the keyword which is reserved in JavaScript. So you can't use it normally for declaring a variable, but if you want to use it, you have to use $sign or a dash in front of the keyword to make it a variable. Okay, any keyword start with a capital P, that's come into object oriented programming. So I would not recommend you to start your variable name with capital P, although you can, but that comes in object oriented programming, which is going to get into details, and there you will find that why I'm not allowing you to take your variable name with a capital P. And when you declare, and the fourth one is when you declare any variables with a complete capital name, that's called constant, and that's generally used to define those values which not going to be changed, like your passwords, API, to all those things we denote with these constant with all the capital. And don't declare a variable's name like this. Try to declare a variable's name like this, descriptive form, so anybody can read it. So that's it in this video. Hope you have got the complete understanding that what is variables, what is values, and how you can make the differences between them. So that's it in this video. Let's move to the next one.